Hello, everyone.
Hello.
We're going to start soonish. Probably going to give it maybe 5 minutes or so for people to pop in, since it's a new meeting and this is a brand spanking new time zone for us. Uh,
And it's Monday.
and it's Monday. All of those things compounded. Um, So the calendar invite would have given you a set of links for this meeting, including the agenda. If you do not have the calendar invite, I'm popping the agenda in here. Feel free to pop in, add your name, and yeah, I'm just going to post this in Sig Release as well. Oh, this is auto recording. I'm wondering if I should turn auto recording off for the meetings. All right, enough anticipation. I think we've got enough people. Hello, everyone. This is the August 5th edition of the release engineering meeting for Kubernetes. This is also the first release engineering meeting. So welcome. Thank you everyone for showing up. Please be mindful that this is a meeting that is recorded and on the internet for posterity. So be mindful of what you say. Be sure to adhere to the Kubernetes Code of Conduct and just be generally excellent people, right? So I've posted the release engineering meeting notes, agenda of 1 of 0 in the chat. Take a moment to fill that out if it was not there when you were joining. Let me just repost it. And you're also going to want to take a look at this board because we're going to try to walk this board every meeting. I don't have a lot in particular that I want to cover outside of saying that we got the meeting off the ground and being happy about that. I think that over the last cycle or so, we've made lots of headway in terms of just understanding what release engineering is for Kubernetes and trying to get an idea of what the improvements should be moving forward. So in 1.16, we're kind of on this path of moving from brainstorming into more brainstorming, formalized brainstorming, and then execution. So a lot of that is understanding the things that the artifacts that we produce for Kubernetes, the way that we host them, the tooling that we use to do that, and what can be done to improve all three, right? So if you haven't seen the release engineering brainstorm, this is kind of the work product of a few chats that Tim and I have had both together and with several people. That is linked in the chat as well. Additionally, if anyone is interested in being note taker, I'm not sure if someone's already note taking, but if anyone wants the illustrious duty and privilege of note taking for this meeting, feel free to. So take an opportunity to read through that brainstorm. What will be happening over the next few weeks or so will be turning that into KEPs. I think that there's been some shuffle in terms of releases as well as sorting some administrivia. And now that the release is kicked off and running in earnest, we can step back and move back to the to generating the KEPs based on some of that information. So before we go into walking the board, I want to give an opportunity to not so much ask if anyone's new on the call because we're all new on this call, but if this is anyone's first time at a SIG release meeting, a SIG release or SIG release sub-project meeting, and would they like to introduce themselves and just talk a little bit about what they're interested in getting out of this experience?
Hi, Stephen. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Yeah. My name is Imran. I'm part of the communications shadow role for 1.16 release. So I thought I'll just take the uh, whole whole flow in and learn more about the release engineering. So that's why I'm here.
Awesome, welcome. I think I see one new face. Tommy, are you new to any of the SIG release calls? All right, I put Tommy on the spot. All righty. All right, so before we go board walking, I think I'd like to ask if anyone has questions before we get started with that because it's going to be quite a bit.
Hey, Khosrow, if I'm pronouncing your name right, as a moderator, I'm unable to unmute you also, but hi and welcome to the meeting.
Alrighty. Seems like no topics. All right, so we're going to go into the board. Share my screen. Kill Slack. All right. So you may be aware or may not be aware, but Kubernetes has a set of org-wide project boards that you can view at any time. Release engineering has quite a few. SIG release overall have quite a few. So we've got a SIG release board, a licensing board, the release team board, and the release engineering board, which we'll be focusing on in this meeting. So what I'd like to do is make sure that we capture anything that has not been captured before. So there's a little search term here, is open, label, area, release, eng, repo, star, right? So that's capturing everything that's labeled release engineering, which is our label for the subproject, and let's capture all of the repos within Kubernetes, right? Or within the Kubernetes org. This doesn't capture everything across all Kubernetes orgs, which we can probably fix later. So the first thing I want to do is make sure that we grab anything that looks release engineering-y that is not captured on the board already. So we've got an update to the patch release dates. It's in progress. Import restrictions for end-to-end framework. This might be publishing bot related, right? Yeah. So I wonder, Nikita, are you on the call?
Yep.
Okay. Question for you. We were kind of mulling this around in the last SIG release meeting, I believe. And the question was, does it make sense for the publishing bot to be part of the release engineering subproject? It's kind of listed as a separate thing right now, or we're kind of thinking that maybe it made sense to be part of the release engineering bundle.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. Actually, I was going to ask you about it if it made sense as well. So
Okay, well,
I think we're
boom.
on the same page.
There it is. So we'll fix that in owners later. Just, yeah, thanks, Bob. All right, so let's move this in. And it looks like the review is in progress already, right? Yep. Okay. IPv6, dual stack, Waka Waka. That is not really us, which means some area of code is auto tagging with area release eng. So we should probably look at that. Moving things to staging. That is probably tagged us again for publishing bot stuff. Well, you don't need to touch that. Phase 2 dual stack. More kubectl. No. Okay, that's licensing. And okay, all right. So did an okay job at making sure cards are added for this thing. Let's also make sure that, so in general, I'd like to see the to-do column and the in progress column, or rather anything that is marked priority critical urgent, hopefully already in progress. If not in progress, then in either in the to-do column. So right. Okay, cool. All right. Okay. And this, I'm just doing quick checks to make sure that things that are things are in the right columns. So let's do priority important soon. Priority important soon, I expect to really be in any column. I think this is a label that we use most frequently. So this one's in progress, I know. Okay, right, and that's true as well. And then the priority important long terms I expect to all be in the backlog, right? And are in progress, and that's true. Cool. So now I wonder if we can do no assignee, none, no. How about things not assigned to me? Okay, let's start there. All right. First time walking aboard on stage, so all right. Not assigned to me. All right, so let's start giving out some stuff. People interested in that? Okay. All right, so the publishing bot does not assign correctly. I believe that, Hannes, were you looking at this at some point?
Yeah, basically, I implemented the thing, the creation of the issue when a new branch is created and all that fuss.
Okay.
There are some bugs which we need to fix in Anago.
Okay. All right. Can I leave you to review this one?
Yes.
Cool. And okay, no assignee for that one. That makes sense.
By the way, you can get the list of issues that don't have assignees with no colon assignee.
No colon assignee, really. Huh. Thanks, Nikita. All right. Tim, do we want to maybe close this one out?
I was just thinking about that. Yeah, it could, I mean, it's there as a reference, like as a design concept idea. I don't think I'm gonna implement, if I were to implement something like this, it wouldn't happen until the other things we were talking about rewriting were rewritten, but maybe they get rewritten in a way that just embodies this. I don't know.
Yeah, because I'm very close to tearing up those handbooks. So, all right.
And maybe just a suggestion for the recording or for folks follow along. When you say this one, say like pull
Exactly what it
61
is.
or
Yeah.
issue number 78940 or whatever, just so it's a little more clear.
Okay. So Tim had a PR open for Makefile wrapping. So the idea here is that we want to essentially ensconce the commands that we use to cut a release, right? So commands in Anago or GCB Manager, which are two of our release tools, one being a wrapper for the other. To make it a little easier to one, mock some of these flows, and two, like place them in CI so we could test staging or test releasing, make it and also just make it a little bit more intuitive for maybe newer release managers stepping into it. So that issue is SIG release 621, and we're closing it for now, pending a rewrite of the branch manager and patch release team playbooks, runbooks. So you can see that we've created a new done column for done 116. So automatically everything that gets swiped over to done, and this is for all of the SIG release boards, should be moved into done 116. That way we have kind of an idea of what has happened for the cycle instead of this board of this column of question marks.
Can you tweak that query to only show ones that actually merged? So like this one's a close without a PR merging.
I wonder if it is merged. And well, is closed and not is merged, probably, right? There you go. Right, that works.
It's still showing up. It's the first one there in your list on.
No, that's purposely looking for not is merged.
Oh, sorry, not. Yeah.
Do you want is merged?
Font is tiny.
Oh, sorry. Better? Ish? Better-ish?
The difference between a colon and an exclamation point is hard.
All right, so let's do not is closed and I guess not is merged. Let's do that. Okay, it won't let me scroll now. All right, and no assignee. Okay. This one is not ready for review yet. This is an update that I'm testing for the CNI version. So that is Kubernetes 78819. Essentially what I want to do here, and this is me just pleading to the CI gods for tests to pass. So essentially, when we release Kubernetes, we also package a few other things for debs and RPMs, right? So it's kubeadm, the kubeadm, kubelet, kubectl, Kubernetes CNI, and CRI tools, right? So we wanted to try to understand, because I think this has been an open question for a while, what you need to do actually to release a new version of CNI. So Kubernetes, we recently introduced, is it here? The dependencies file? Yes, right. So we recently introduced the dependencies.yaml, and that's pretty cool because what it'll do is it lists a set of dependencies, the versions for those dependencies, as well as a set of ref paths or reference paths, which include the absolute path in the repo to locate that file, as well as a regex match for the version number, or the line that contains the version number in that file, right? So the idea being that lots of people sometimes want to update the dependencies for Kubernetes. They're unsure how to go about doing that. So this, and usually it involves some archaeology, understanding where these version numbers exist, maybe doing the exact thing that this file would be doing, right? So this is utilized by verify dependencies, a utility in Kubernetes /command /verify dependencies /verify dependencies.go. And that will check this file, right? And essentially make sure that the version numbers, the version number specified in these ref paths matches the version number specified in dependencies.yaml, right? So you can see we have a few listed here: etcd, Docker, Golang, CNI, Core DNS, and CRI CTL, right? Each of them have a slightly different process for changing things, people to contact. We're working on essentially a policy for exactly how to do this, who you should contact and when. Right now, this is kind of being handled by the contributors who are already reviewers, approvers within the build directory, and some of the release engineering personnel. So essentially what I'm trying to do here is figure out all the places that I need to touch. This PR was actually started before that build dependencies YAML existed. But you can see that we're changing it in a make file. We're changing it in the Kube-ADM spec and the kubelet spec, and the SHAs and the version in the Bazel workspace definition, and more things here. So what we recognize is that initially it was pointing to a GCS bucket Kubernetes release, which /network plugins, which requires someone with access to push to that bucket. I think at this point in time, at the time of recording, we are unsure who actually publishes the tarballs for the CNI plugins to Kubernetes release, which is our official release bucket. And because of that, I kind of said, okay, well, it might make more sense to just use the GitHub download link, right? So that this PR also switches over to the GitHub download link, because if we can't tell who actually publishes this, that's kind of a break in our system, because they're kind of outside of the release engineering flow, right? This is, I think traditionally it's probably been like, hey, let's contact this person, make sure it's uploaded, and then we're able to update. And that, these network plugins seem to have not been updated in that bucket for some time. So that kind of moves us over to using GitHub download URLs. Also, a point is that the container networking is not officially a part of Kubernetes, so I'm not sure that it makes sense to host binaries for them. That was true prior, but it's not true anymore. So I'm trying to get this PR to work is the short version of all of this, and I think we're at the point where end-to-end tests are failing now. So actually failing for good reason. So still looking into that. So I haven't assigned anyone to that one just yet.
And one other complexity, even if you get into in-tests working on master, if you actually were to publish that as is today to the one repo until we get the repos fixed.
Wait, hold on. Different problem. Or the problem is obviated for, okay, how to explain?
Okay, so back up. Problem statement. I'm worried that release 113 branch CI will fail if this merges to master. I mean, sorry, if you merge to master and use it to build and publish.
Right. So the first part would be proving that it works on master. If we fix end-to-end tests or we find out that they're flakes of end-to-end tests, if it works on master, I would cherry pick this back to the other branches and see what happens. Right. So this is kind of what we wanted to do to prove that it would work.
I mean, you got to cherry pick all the dependencies YAML related changes too, right?
Exactly, but I'm not cherry picking the dependency.yaml changes until we settle on that. We also have until we settle where that's going. So there's also
next problem statement. If you get the CI to work right, end users who use Yum or apt against our repos will upgrade their old clusters to the new version. By backporting the dependencies, you make sure our tests don't do that, but we can't manage theirs.
Right. So if they're using Kube-ADM, right, their dependencies should all be held. I'm not sure if that's all of their dependencies though. Kubernetes CNI and CRI tools might not be held.
If they're using a new Kube-ADM?
No, in our instructions, we tell them to hold the packages before doing an upgrade. So if you're doing an upgrade, you're planning to go up in versions anyway. But let's not not rat hole maybe.
I think this is important for the broader set of people here
Okay,
to
all right.
understand the general problem of publishing packages.
Right. Okay. So during our publishing phase, after we've cut a release and published it to GitHub, the final phase is to also to build and build, package, and release or publish debs and RPMs for the Kube Kubelet, kubectl, Kubernetes CNI, and CRI tools. Right. One of the aching problems that we currently have in that repo is first is that the main repo that we use for Kubernetes is named, or for at least on the Debian side, is named Kubernetes Xennial, right? So I mean, just by name, it implies that these are packages that only work for Kubernetes Xennial, which is not true. Like if you have Bionic, it should work. If you are updating to Buster or starting to use Buster, it should work as well. If you've got an older non-end of life version of Debian, it should work as well, right? So we're kind of locked into this. We get a few issues that say like, hey, I was wondering when support is going to happen for this, right? For this release of the distro, and you probably can just use the packages that are in the repo today. That's where we publish all of our packages. On the RPM side, it is not necessarily similar. I think it's named based on, what is it, EL7, something EL7, Tim?
I believe it's EL7, yeah.
Okay, all right. So implying that you would be using some version of Relish distro 7, right? So whether it be CentOS or RHEL or Fedora, so on and so forth. So that's one problem, repo naming. We'd like to eventually move, and you'll see if you check out the brainstorm, that we want to move to something that captures the version instead of Kubernetes, right? And then also the channel, right? So whether it's a stable, unstable testing, figure out how exactly we want to name that before doing it. So part of that is like, do we want to create a new repo in Google infrastructure? And the answer is no, not really. We want to be able to figure out exactly how to create these repos, what the directory structure should look like, and build them in CNCF infrastructure, right? So we have an entire working group dedicated to that, multiple hands in the pot. I think many of them are on the call currently. So part of starting this effort was Google donated $9 million in credits to the CNCF to say, hey, build Kubernetes, build this out in the open for the community, and here are some credits to do it, right? So that working group is kind of tasked around understanding all of the bits that go into building the infrastructure that's required to maintain Kubernetes, the project, and standing that up in parallel, right? So we have access, Tim, myself, and Caleb, we have access to new projects for release, staging, and a prod project. And access to GCS buckets within those GCP projects. So I think that it's now it's a matter of playing around, understanding what the directory structure needs to be, writing scripts around that stuff to make sure that we can stand it up, throw it away. We can easily reproduce that process. But it's an important thing, but it's probably falls a little lower on the long laundry list. So the second issue that we have, because it sounds like I bundled a bunch of issues in there, but the second issue that we have is the dependencies for the packages that we publish within these apt and yum repos, right? So we've had some initially, I think that some of the dependencies that we chose, it kind of came down to equals versus greater than and equals. And so essentially, like KubeADM and I think the Kubelet are the two packages that specify dependencies and versions for dependencies. At some point, I think we switched from equals to greater than are equal to, which fixed some things. But I think, some people may have noticed that within the, I believe the 114 release cycle, that was changed, or accidentally changed and broke some stuff. And the reason it broke some stuff was because the assumption, your package manager will do what you tell it to do, right? So if you publish a package that says, I only want this version, and it has to be equal to this version, or it has to be greater than or equal to this version. One problem with setting greater than or equal to a version is that we introduce a set of skew, a massive skew across different release branches and combinations. So do we know that CRI tools 112 will work absolutely with a Kubernetes 114 or something, or 115, right? And we know that to be true because that's currently what we're publishing. That was only recently not true. But overall,
true, but not advertised.
True, but not advertised. Exactly. So part of the release process is that also these ancillary packages are only published when we change the spec of. So I'll show you that really quickly. Start publishing your packages. GitHub has voice recognition now. So we've got a few, and these were recently moved if anyone's looking at this and wondering how they got there. So there's a kubelet spec. First problem, the spec is named kubelet, and it is not the spec for building the kubelet package. It is a spec for building all packages, right? All of the packages that I mentioned, so kubeadm, kubelet, kubectl, Kubernetes CNI, and CRI tools, right? So you can see it's telling you the locations of certain things, how to download them, but you can see that there are some versions locked in, right? So this is set at 113, and the reason that it's set at 113 is 113 is our minimum supported Kubernetes right now, right? So once we cut the release for 116, 113 will go out of service essentially, right, or out of support. So this will need to be changed again, right? So first problem is that we base a lot of things on assuming the minimum version, which is fine-ish, but really these specs should be broken out by package as well as by Kubernetes version, right, or by package version, right, so that we can capture a point in time of these packages, right?
And move to KK.
Yes, eventually, bigger fight. So Hannes brought up another point, which is, come on, why aren't you? Nonsense. I can't type today, and I spelled Kubernetes wrong. All right, so within our build directory in Kubernetes, you'll notice that there's also a deb and RPM folder, right? So we can see here that they actually break it out by spec, right? And these are the ones that are sent through CI, but the ones that we actually use to publish a release are in Kubernetes release. So one, we need to reconcile changes between the two, and then we need to dedupe, right? So moving the actual specs that are used from Kubernetes release into Kubernetes. And there is also an issue for this But actually, before we stray too far, well, I'll continue yapping about the packages, right? So right now, where we are is that because packages are set with the dependencies to greater than or equals to, that means all of the ones that are essentially untested are we're introducing a we're introducing new SKU, right? We're saying, okay, well, if we bump the Kubernetes CNI version, that means everyone who is supported or everything that is in that repo, which is currently everything, right? Both on the RHEL 7 and the RHEL 7 and the Kubernetes Xennial apt and yum repos. So basically, we're saying a version of 1.9 should work with, I want you to update to the latest CNI 0.81. And we have no guarantee that that will work. Sure, 1.9 is out of support, but right now everything is in that repo. So even something supported like 1.13, do we know that 1.13 works with CNI 0.81 or CNI, or yeah, or the CNI plugins that are published in 0.81? No, I have no clue, right? So we're introducing some danger that we'd prefer not to do, which is why we've been moving slow on kind of completing that PR. So Tim, you mentioned the dependencies YAML and making changes to that and backporting it, right? So we made some additional changes to it, adding some owners in for release engineering, reviewers and approvers, as well as moving it from build dependencies, build/dependencies to build external dependencies so that we could apply that owners file, right? And bring a few more owners in instead of just the top level build approvers. More updates to dependencies and swapping the location for the script to check. So we're waiting on that to land, which is waiting on, I have to write policy for how we want to do this moving forward. So basically if you're updating Go, this is what you should do. If you're updating etcd and so on and so forth, right? So we're kind of using the CNI version bump to wrap my head around it and document some of it. And I think finding people who have similar experiences bumping like CRI tools or someone who's bumped Go before or etcd, and making sure that we're capturing all of those experiences in the policy before merging that in. Did you want to add some color on the packaging thing?
It's a mess. We've been doing things in a way that used to make sense, but maybe doesn't depending on what our users want. We've had a lot of users complain about issues, but it's also hard for us to know what the right thing is across multiple sets of conflicting user demands. And then the other big caveat on all of this is, I'll say it officially for the recording, you'd be kind of crazy to use our repos directly. If you're running an actual cluster, you should be managing in a reproducible way your package stream or your content stream, whether it's packages or containers or all of the above, and not just automatically consume into production something that some random person on the internet published, like download and run as root, bad pattern. So of course you might want to pull it into a CI system to tentatively test, and at that point if you saw failures you'd report them. So the more we start operationalizing, moving these things forward, the more risk we have of incurring user issues as we break them. Either we break them in production or we break them in test. Either way, we have reason to believe that we will cause breaking changes. So the biggest thing that we can do here, I think, is splitting those repositories out into version-specific clusters of packages. And where this becomes controversial is that starts looking like making a Kubernetes 1.13 preferred distribution of packages and a Kubernetes 1.15 preferred distribution of packages. But we kind of need that for our own CI anyway, and it's the type of validation and proof point our users seem to value, especially in the change logs where we list all of the dependencies, but those haven't historically been well managed. So having having that be a little tighter is going to be a good evolution, I believe. But the specific shape and form, we need to experiment with something.
Yeah. So coming soon. There are a lot of balls to juggle on that one. But again, if you have not had a chance to check out this Pharrell engineering brainstorm, we actually talk about some of this stuff here, and yeah, super valuable to take a look at, because everything that we're mentioning is documented here essentially. Okay, back to the board. Actually, any questions based on everything that we've said? All right. All right, here we go. So, okay, that I don't need to do anything with. So this is adding a build Canary job to Canary, the release tooling. So this is based on, so this is test info 13340. And this is related to a bunch of changes that we made on some shell scripts, adding shell checking, or shell checking our shell scripts, which led to various breakages in our release blocking. Our release blocking jobs kind of broke Kubernetes for a little bit. This happened a little before July 4th, maybe the end of June. So a few things to do here, and one of the problems that we have is that the Kubernetes repo depends on Kubernetes release to run some of its CI jobs, and the reason for that is a fun script called primarily a script called my computer froze, called pushbuild.sh, right? So pushbuild is it's in the name. It's responsible for pushing builds of Kubernetes, and CI then uses these builds to run its tests against, right? So push build is also, I believe Ben Elder recently opened an issue about moving push build to Kubernetes, which would solve the problem, which would break that dependency. But there are also different libraries that we source. Yes, bash libraries, different bash libraries that we source. Common.sh, gitlib.sh, releaselib.sh, all of which would need to either move along or be more easily consumable. So one of the questions here is, can we rewrite, can we make sure our tooling is better tested, right? And as we poked around in some of this stuff, we realized that it was, a lot of it was syntax errors as opposed to like something that could be purely tested. So maybe we use bats, potential idea. That's kind of just tossing that out there. Longer term goals, we want to be able to refactor the libraries that exist in the Kubernetes Kubernetes release repository, and then basically call them from whatever parts of the scripts currently exist, right? So Ben was kind of thinking that he would like to work on, and I know someone else mentioned to me interest in working on some of this. He'd like to work on essentially decomposing one of the tools, a smaller tool that we use, maybe branch fast forward or something, and rewrite the required pieces of the library, right? So when we have rewritten library or rewritten libraries plus a smaller tool rewritten in a more testable language. So I think, Go is the plan right now. And only when that happens, like if these libraries become Go packages, then that's something that we can pull across to a different repo or write tools around, right? Is there a question?
A comment. I don't know if people are aware of that, but it kind of has already started pulling some stuff out into Go code.
So
It has been done for the, what
release
is it,
notes.
fine grained build stuff.
Right, fine grain build, release notes is one of them as well.
Release notes is also one of them, but this is like kind of totally separated, I think.
Yeah,
But
it's well isolated from the rest of the
from Anago, if you will.
yeah.
Yeah, so what I'm trying to say is there is some infrastructure there to pull out stuff.
So
People can work on.
who is working on this?
I don't know. It is already there. Like the
Okay.
fine grain build is
It's
already
been,
used.
That might have been Catherine, maybe,
yeah.
when she
It's
was.
this has been piecemeal as somebody runs into a problem and decides to refactor it.
Yeah. So what we want moving forward is a very concerted effort on doing that refactor. Again, finding smaller tools, being able to rewrite the libraries, because like the common gitlib and releaselib are all libraries that we depend on for essentially most of these release tools. So yeah, TBD. And then once those tools are moved over, or once those tools are in a place where they're importable, or kind of easier to shift around from repo to repo, we can start to look at a full refactor of the existing tools from shell to go. But again, this is probably, I want to say, a cycle and a half, 2 cycles before we see like completion of that. And that might be, I don't know, that might be hopeful, more hopeful than anything. But I think that given some of the recent traction that we've had, that is not impossible. And given we've got more of your lovely faces on the call, people showing up, people willing and interested in doing the work, that we will move a lot faster than we have in the past.
Hey, Bart, would this be a moment maybe to talk about what you've done trying to understand better what's there in the common sh or releaselib.sh in that set of bash?
Yep, so exactly at this moment, I just unmuted myself and I wanted to start talking. Can I show you something? Because I'm working on, also, I'm digging into the whole tooling and all bash scripts and trying, and I'm actually understanding everything inside. So,
Okay, so just as a note, we've got 9 minutes left, if that's enough time.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, perfect. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing.
I won't be like talking a lot. I just want to show you, and I think that it can be interesting and helpful for other people when I finish. Give me a second. One moment, please. So, can you see my screen?
Yep.
So what I was doing during the last 2 or 3 weeks was like digging very deeply inside all tooling and like trying to understand the whole flow, dependencies, etc. So I created like already flowcharts for almost everything in the tooling. And then I'm finishing right now, like checking where are the dependencies and what are the dependencies from the other like files, for example, common.sh or gitlib, etc. And like every color here has like its own meaning. And then there are like a parts of the scripts which are doing something. And what I tried to do was to check first if we can split it into smaller chunks and start also rewriting after the gitlib, for example, or common sh, etc. So when I finish that, and I need a week or so, I will show like the whole flowchart with the document where are dependencies and what are like a logical flow of these scripts. And I think that it can be helpful first to write proper tests in the future. Second, check what actually these particular scripts are doing logically. And this is just it, what I wanted to show you. And I was working on it, and I don't know, maybe if somebody will like to look at it first, I can show it and I can share it, and maybe it will be helpful for anybody else.
Yeah, this is really awesome. So Tim showed me this, I think, last week, And so the one thing I mentioned, and I think like one, I think it's awesome. I think it's gonna move the needle forward, especially like when we start exploring these scripts, we do a lot of like staring at it for a while, and then I think we start doing the same workflow in our minds, like, okay, well, how does this map to this? Like, open this file,
Exactly.
go over here. So it's awesome. One thing I would say we need to do is make sure that we are documenting the work that we're doing.
So exactly, that was, I started with the flowcharts to myself, and then I wanted to make it as a part of the documentation. So, and then when we have a view of that, this is only, I showed you only an ago, which was the last I was working on. And there is like almost every file, every shell file which we have inside is already finished. And I think that having it will help us to make it smaller, like to split it into smaller chunks. And this work helped me a lot understanding the flow, understanding how is it working and what is inside. So I hope that it will help you too, guys.
Yes, I think it's going to be super helpful. What I would say, so what I meant with regards to documentation is stating your intent to work on something with the community, right? That way everyone is aware. Like, so to give an example for this one, and I mentioned this to Tim, like I was essentially doing the same archaeology when you were working on the artifacts documentation. I was doing the same work, right? So we need to make sure, and especially because we have so many more people getting involved in this now. We have people on working group K8s Infra who are doing things that are related to release engineering. We also have new people scaling up on the release engineering side. We have people who have worked on it in the past that we occasionally need to tap for knowledge, and all of those threads are like in various GitHub issues. Or maybe just DMs, back and forth to these people, right? So this is a note for everyone on the call. If you are going to work on something, if you plan to work on something, one, make sure you discuss it with it's great if you can discuss it with the release chairs, right? So myself, Tim, and Caleb, and make sure you document it. Make sure you state your intent somewhere so that we can track it the same way we're tracking everything on this board, knowing the work that people are doing, so we don't step on each other's toes, we don't duplicate work. Moving forward is really, really important. You see how many people are on this call, and that's just a fraction of the people who plan to work on release engineering in the next few cycles, right? So please, please, please make sure that you're documenting your intent to work on something as well as your progress there.
Agree. Sorry about that.
No, all good, all good. All right, so I think that, we've got more board to walk, but we've only got 4 minutes, and and for anyone who's on the release team, you've got a double header. You've got the release team meeting coming up. So I want to give a final opportunity for any introductions, anyone who hasn't said hi yet, and any open discussion items.
Hey, this is the wall here. I work for VMware. I was destined for a lead last release, and I thought I'll volunteer on the associates as an associate here.
Cool. Welcome to all. So one more thing to mention before we go. This meeting is, well, it's the release engineering meeting. You already know that. But for the people who are on any of the release manager groups, right? So the patch release team, the branch managers, release manager associates. I really hope that you will be attending this meeting. We recently moved all of our meetings essentially to make sure that it was convenient time for at least EMEA and some of the further reaching European time zones. It's still tricky. I don't think we could find an easy time for APJ, which is unfortunate. So I know Nikita, who is on, thank you for biting the bullet and still showing up to a meeting that is probably like 10, 11 your time. I think depending on the level of interest for this meeting, if we need to look at doing something for APAC, we probably can in future. But at the very least, we wanted to make sure that we're pulling in more of the EMEA folks at a more convenient time zone for y'all. So thank you everyone who participated in the doodle. Thank you everyone who's complained to us for cycles that that the meeting needed to be moved. So we've done it. We can finally close the ticket. There was a ticket open for it. We can close that now. And thank you everyone who showed up to the first one. Hopefully we'll continue this very, very interesting discussion about release engineering. I will see you all next time.
See you. Bye bye.
The